I thought we already start.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I begin, as I always begin, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and all other matters. It is such a pleasure and such an honor to have Amar as my guest on Friends Along the Way. And those of you in the gallery, welcome, especially those on the Patreon page who make this work possible. Just a reminder, if you want to join the conversation, I'm going to introduce him with his bio first, and then Amar's going to talk, for 15 minutes or so about his journey. And then I'm going to talk about knowing him and loving him and admiring him as a human being. And then I will ask him the first question for the Q&A, and then it will be open for the gallery. You may choose to put your question in the chat if you don't want to, remain anonymous. I mean, you have to say who you are to get the question in the chat, but I mean, if you don't want your face or your voice, then I'll take it from the chat. Otherwise, you can raise your virtual hand and I will acknowledge you, and then you can ask your question and you can leave the video off if that's what you prefer, or you can share the video and the voice, keeping in mind that eventually this recording will be made public on Lady Imam YouTube channel. So everybody has those options. Without further ado, Amar is an Indonesian trans man Muslim activist and a queer theology enthusiast with experience within social activism, aiming to unpack queer-phobic languages and challenge dehumanizing narratives in theology. He spent several years in two pesantren, which is the Islamic boarding schools here in Indonesia, namely Pesantren Tafizul Quran and Asharia in Wonosobo, Central Java for 3 years, and Pesantren Idi Manitoro, Salatiga for a year. He taught in Pesantren Nurul Hidayah, Kindo, Central Java for 2 years. In 2019, Amar co-founded Jaringan Transgender Indonesia, the Indonesian Transgender Network. In the same year, he also published a booklet entitled Christian Islam, Progressive Interpretation of Gender Diversity and Sexuality, a Guideline to Understand Human Body and God, published by Gaya Nusantara, which I think will be in our portal when we launch it tomorrow. Currently, he is a board representation for East and Southeast Asia at Global Interfaith Network for People of All Sexes, Sexual Orientations, Gender Identities, and Expression. He is also pursuing his master's degree in theology and religion at the University of Birmingham, UK, and not too cold at the moment, and that's where we welcome him. Thank you very much, Alma. You have the floor.
Thank you, Auntie Amina, for such a warm welcome, and it's always happy to meet with her and like have a chat, because even when I was still wearing hijab before, you were already my inspiration. So that's kind of, and I didn't expect like that someday we would really meet, like the first time it Kathmandu like 3 years ago. So that was really interesting and very memorable time together when we did like queer salah, first time in my life. So I just wanted to say hi first for my Indonesian friends already joined as well. So I think my journey as a trans man begins when I was still a kid. Of course, it's like everyone else, when I questioned, of course, myself, because I didn't know what gender is at that time when I was kid, when I was still in madrasah ibtidaiyah, it's like elementary school. So I always spent like my life studying in Islamic schools, even when I was really, really young. and I had to join with students in my family's Islamic boarding schools here. So pretty much everything that I grew up is really the Islamic institution here. So and then I think before I got to Madrasah Thanawiyah, or secondary school, I was kind of actually I had a freedom. I mean, because people might think that okay, it's just a kid, so they didn't care when I like wore masculine clothes, and even I slept in a male dormitory at the time, and that was really fantastic. I mean, like I felt that I belong to this box, let's say that I was accepted in this male dormitory. Of course, because I was what is it, a teacher's kid, so people like respected me and so on. But then everything like went crazy when I moved to secondary school, when I started to be that people started to tell me, you are a woman, you are a girl, you have to wear hijab. And like that really swift everything that I had before, like the confusion that I had between masculinity, femininity, this male dormitory, and then I had to move to female dormitory as a woman, as a girl. That was really crazy, that was really intense, and I started to think about myself that okay, this is not me, that I don't belong to this community. and and yeah, like very terrifying as well. And then I then I had to move to another Islamic boarding school, in this Quranic school, for 3 years. But I felt that that was also another moment that I started to think about myself as well. And at that time as well, I actually like projected my own identity, that I blend everything, like if there is someone, if there was someone like has different opinion, like different tafsir, let's say, I always blame them. Oh no, this you are in the wrong path. Like you, let's say, what is it? Like the terms like kafir, I use that a lot because I don't know, and I think because like I projected my own confusion to others. And even I always judge queer people. Like, of course, the queer is not a coin at that time. I didn't I didn't recognize, know that at that time. But like people who had like non-conforming gender expressions at that time, I blamed them, I judged them, things like that. And then I think because yes, I didn't know myself, I didn't know anything. That kind of projection happened like for so many years. And then I graduated from this Quranic school, and then I got back with my family. And then at one point in 2012, I went to Haji with my mother. And I think that was, I don't know, like I didn't know why I went there, because I felt that okay, my parents forced me to go there, so just I went there. Nothing special at that time, And then during one moment in Arafah at that time, my mother told me, please pray something. I think because she knew that I didn't pray anything, even in front of Kaaba, I didn't pray anything because I felt nothing about myself, right? But then, and I never talked with my mother, to be honest. Like really, we were very distant. I I never talked with her unless she asked me something, and then I would answer yes or no. That's all. But during that Haji, that was, I think, the first time my mother tried to ask me, what's wrong with you? You felt like you looked confused with yourself. You looked like disconnected with your own faith, let's say. And you didn't pray, you didn't cry like everyone else. And then she said, please pray something, at least one pray that you would ask, to Allah and things like that. And then just one sentence that I said at that time during the Arafah moment is that I wanted to know who I am. That's all that I prayed for, you know. And I didn't say that with my mother. I just like, okay, I will pray. But I just, deep in my heart, I just asked God to just show who I am. That's all, because I don't know who I am. Then, like, I don't know the purpose of life. I don't know even the religion. Even the Islam that I had. I don't know what it means. Things like that. And yeah, that one pray, just I kept repeating. I kept saying until the end of the Hajj, the pilgrimage. And then I don't know, like after the Hajj, I think like I don't know, like everything led me to to the revelation of my trans identity, because after the Hajj, like out of nowhere, I met with someone who is a psychiatrist, and he taught me about gender identity that I never heard before, about sexuality, about diversity, even in terms of diverse religion, and then, like I don't know, I think I felt that Allah guides me that I meet with other people that know about this gender identity, this gender expression, this sexuality. And of course it took like many years to really grasp all the concepts, all this like really the diversity of human bodies in terms of gender and sexuality and so on. And I ended up meeting with this trans-friendly psychiatrist, which is really rare in Indonesia, because most of the psychologists or psychiatrists, they mostly they were like preacher. If someone go to the psychologist, oh, I think I am gay, for example, I think I'm trans, most of them will say, oh no, you have to get back to your own nature, your fitrah, your takdir, as a hetero, as a cis. But I ended up finding this very trans-friendly psychologist in Jogja. So I had to like go there like several times, different cities, finding like everything that I can do to find this psychologist. And then I was observed like for 6 months, and then and then I was told that, okay, you have this gender dysphoria, that your gender identity, your sexuality is like non-conforming, let's say. And then, okay, so I'm a trans man. And then I started to embrace my identity. But still there's mystery of the faith of the Islamic theology, where I always heard that, oh, you are not accepted, Allah is not does not create you as a trans, things like that. There's still a lot of mystery happening after I found out as a trans man. But yes, again, I don't know why. Because again, let's say I was led to meet with people who know a lot of things. Like the first time I met with Buya Hussein Muhammad, like a Muslim scholar from Indonesia. I remember he said several years ago in an interfaith community, in interfaith event when I engaged with, he said that no matter your sexual orientation, your gender identity, Allah doesn't see your physical. What Allah says is your taqwa, your good deeds. I never heard things like that before. And then that was the moment, okay, if Allah doesn't see me as, doesn't care if I woman, if I trans, if I'm gay, everything, then it should be okay for me to be trans man and Muslim, right? And that was a moment that started me to do my own ijtihad, like I tried to ask a lot of Muslim scholars, even in my kampung or my village. And I was surprised by the fact that even most of them didn't know about gender identity, sexuality, but they say that yes, that's true. Allah doesn't see who you are, who your physical, what you wear. What Allah sees is your heart. So that that I was mesmerized by, you know, by the responses that they had. And like the very, what is it, the traditional approach, like theological grounding that they taught me, and then make me realize that okay, nothing to reconcile between my gender identity as trans man and my faith as a Muslim. So yeah, and then I met you in Kathmandu, and once again make me realize that there should be space like that, like the spiritual space, the prayer, the salah, that should be very inclusive for everyone, regardless of our gender identity expression and sexual orientation. So I don't know if I still have time, but that's sort of what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I particularly love hearing your story because, as you know, now that you've been
Mhm.
active in sort of, let's just say, gender non-conforming spaces, many young people meet so much pushback and so much harshness that, you know, they have to live through that trauma in order to even, you know, find their heart, let alone to, you know, return that heart to Allah. You know, we want to make it so that we have a general level of, you know, taqwa and his, you know, fairness in every community, in every home. We need to train the communities, we need to train parents. It's a mystery to parents as well, you know. I love that in a way, you know, you came with this like little tiny flame, you know, you could ask one question, you know, who am I? And then, you know, Allah just accepted that question in the sincerity with which you asked it, and then just constantly gave you, you know, what we call the polished mirror, you know, people who would mirror back to you, you know, the journey. Obviously, there's a lot of pushback, and obviously, you also experience that. But I think in a lot of ways, when I hear your story, one of the things that I'm most heartened by is, you know, the support of your family, you know, your mom, you know, having particular teachers. This is new to me that you had a therapist who was also,
Mhm.
you know, more informative and not judgmental,
Mhm.
because you're right, there is also so much pushback. So I think in some ways, um, you know, I want to see a future where, you know, every child can ask that question, who am I? And the things that they get back is always going to be loving. And, I am particularly interested, as are you, in the intersection between identity and Islam. Now, I'm saying Islam and not Muslim here because many of us have an idea about this thing out there, you know, called Islam, in which we identify as Muslim, but it includes many things, and that includes the reality of the sacred being of Allah, whom we all aspire to know, and yet all we know is our perspective of it, you know. Um, and so we're negotiating that terrain. And I think in my experience, you know, working inside queer Muslim context for the last 20 years, one of the most amazing things that I encountered was a trans woman who read a poem, and the poem said, "My God is not a woman, my God is not a man. My God is both and neither. My God is who I am." And
Oh,
that
wow.
just leaves everything possible, and it aligns it with that sacred reality. Um, And I love that. I love that because I don't believe that God is male, and I have to fight for it sometimes because people are saying, well, it never says hiya in Arabic, you know. Like I think about Ibn Arabi, it does say hiya if you're talking
Mm,
about Azad and Qudusiyya. Azad is feminine,
mm,
and that's Allah, you know.
mm, mm,
So I'm always very heartened because part of being an elder in this community is sometimes being approached by people just for consultation, and there are many broken stories. So it's just so lovely to have met you, and our launching of KISS is also indebted to you because you led me to the person who's my tech assistant, who's did all the hard work, and all I did was complain about what wasn't there that I wanted there and everything. I have to say that because Ursa worked so hard. And you turned me on to her, you turned her on to me, and we've been doing really well. Um, and before we open up to the gallery, for those people who came late, just a reminder, you can raise your virtual hand and ask the question of Amar, and make a comment. If you are shy to have your face and your voice, just put it in the chat. I will keep my eye on it starting soon, and I will read your question or comment. And if you are able to speak, but you don't want your video, you don't have to turn it on. And if you're able to do, the voice and the video, I say this because I respect people's right for privacy, and this will be published public. So, that's why everyone has that option. But the first question that I want to ask actually is about your your work bringing together the guideline. Um, how was that experience? How were you motivated? And what were the challenges in getting that out? Because this is the kind of thing that I want KISS to, be centered around the efforts that have been made by queer identified Muslims themselves in order to express this, inclusive theology. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So yeah, it was actually the book that based on the event that was organized by Gaya Nusantara in Surabaya, and that was also the first moment when I met with other religious scholars from Christian and from Muslim communities. I met with a lot of inspiring trans women Muslim as well, and from Christian trans women as well. So we came from different parts of regions from Indonesia 3 years ago, and then we met in Yogyakarta actually. Then we talked a lot about how can we create the productive a narrative that is really affirming, embracing the queer people, the queer identities, but we call that at that time diverse of gender and sexualities. And that was really interesting because that time I was a participant actually. But then at the end of the event, the organizer talked to me like, "Hi, can you like compile something based on what we have talked from the event, from the symposium?" And yes, of course, I would love to do that. So yeah, and then actually that was also I got a lot of very positive responses from either from from Christian preachers and from Muslim preachers. Yeah, of course that was sometimes like I got confused because even though like let's say they are allies, but that sometimes there are still parts of the perspective on gender and sexualities where as allies might be they still didn't grasp the whole concept of gender and sexuality, and somehow it can it could like create misleading on the whole idea of gender and sexualities. And yeah, that was the challenge at the time, and how to navigate these different perspectives from them and just compile them in one simple booklet that can and also from the perspective of Christianity, it was really challenging, but it is it was really amazing because I realized I felt really safe as a person in in this little group, in this small group, that I know they are really good allies, that they wanted to learn. And I also wanted to learn more about a lot of things, the intersection of this interfaith, this gender and sexualities. Uh, and that is really interesting because they like they don't like give solid solid idea. So I have to like process all the ideas into one, at least the simple things that can be accessed for many audiences or like many readers that are not familiar with academic, because I realize when we talk about this queer theology, it somehow really, in the what we call what is it? Yeah, it's really high in the academic that people who are not familiar with this term, they couldn't understand that, they couldn't access that. Even the journals, even the books, even the articles that talk about queer theology in Islam is really rare to access. So yeah, I think that also the challenge. That was also the challenge at that time. But yeah, and 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 I think the most beautiful part of that journey of making this, of creating this booklet, is actually the disseminating process. Because I remember I disseminated this book in Yogyakarta in Christian University, where I invited a Sufi dancer, Sufi whirling. So I have my friends in Kendal. I have a lot of friends who can do Sufi whirling dervishes, and then I invited Rabana musical instrument from Muslim. So that was really beautiful because I see what, like, this is what we need, like in the intersection of everything. Because uh, it's really just, I couldn't what is it, say it in fully, but yeah, like the Sufi teachings and the Christian in Christian university. And there were a lot of trans women, trans men, lesbian, gay also came at that time. And then we celebrated this, how beautiful it is when spirituality is not rigid, is not limited on the box of binary, the box of gender. That what a spirituality should be. You know, we are not limited by that kind of boxes that society creates. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a marvelous thing, because as I reflected back on, those
Mhm,
20 years that I worked closely with the LGBTQI Muslim
mhm,
communities, I realized
mhm,
that as far as my faith journey goes, there was less conflict. There was less, I didn't have to prove my faith in terms that were themselves, uh, you know, limiting me. I mean, when you're thinking about mixed gender lines for prayer, for example, when people accept that gender identities are already diverse,
mhm,
it gives everybody a place in the line. And even those who prefer to step back, it's not like everybody has to go to the front. It's just that those who are comfortable can do that. And I love earlier when you were saying about the box, it makes
mhm,
you understand that this is the vehicle of our three-dimensional, connection, to this earth. But we were already connected to Allah before we were born. And, after we leave this box, we're going to return to Allah. That we always say that, right? So it really
mhm,
gave the embodied experience of Islam a kind of beauty that I had, inadvertently been searching for and not known that I was going to find it, on this 3D reality, because of course that binary is so dominant, in the discourse. Um, so any questions from the gallery? I'm trying to see if you raise your virtual hand, will I see it when I'm not in gallery mode? So just give me a second and just do the gallery mode and just see if there are any virtual hands. Okay, so hopefully the technology will, give me it will, I don't have everybody, I have a small portion of the gallery. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about his with Amar. Amar was one of the first people who responded. I'm not going to tell you. It's been like pulling teeth to get people to remember. They'll send me a message saying they're going to get to it, and then 2 months later you still haven't gotten it. But I just want to hear your take on this idea because you have already been on board, and I will be calling on you again, and this will be the first event that we will post when it gets launched. What do you think about the necessity for queer Islamic studies and theology to make sure that we include the study of sexual diversity with an honest and frank look at sexuality, and with the inclusion of persons whose gender identities has been so besieged by this binary coercion? What do you think of
Mhm,
that?
mhm. I think as Indonesian transman, and I've already seen a lot of, let's say, tragedy, let's say, sorrow, let's say, like sufferings that I don't want to say religion caused that, but religious people, interpretation, misusing Islam as the reason, as the justification to, let's say, to coerce queer people to be who they are not. That is really harmful. And what the idea of the queer Islamic theology is really, really important, especially in the context where, in Muslim majority countries, for like Indonesia, for example, because that is always the justification when people, let's say, what we call conversion therapy under the term ruqyah. It's really common, where family, they force their kids, they force their children to do ruqyah, and what is it? At some point, it's really harsh. It's the mix of the abuse, physical abuses, and also spiritual abuses, and also queer, and also gender and sexual abuses. So it's whole package of abuses in this term ruqyah that people misused to force queer kids or queer people in their family. And the whole concept of queer Islamic theology can help, at least, create the alternative narrative that people can access, that people can learn, that the religion, that Islam should be, used for rahmah, for love, and the idea of fitrah, for example, the idea of takdir, for example, it should be navigated to include everyone, and not to force people, into the life. I would say the life, the lifetime suffering, because it's not only when I live, because even until I'm dead, let's say, trans people always still suffer, because their body are still in the harsh debates. In the recent news, if you follow the news in Indonesia, there is really hot debate from religious leaders, who say that if the trans women are dead, then the body should be um, taken care of as a male, not as a female. And imagine I'm still alive, and people already talk about how I how I should dead. I mean, that's really unacceptable. That's really, it's, I don't know how to say it. It's so terrifying, even to live peacefully without discrimination. It's already take like a lot of courage, a lot of times, and now people already talk about the trans,
Yeah,
trans
I
bodies.
think
Mhm,
the funerary rites is
mhm,
one of the biggest challenges that have been coming,
Mhm.
globally, especially for trans people,
Mhm.
because if you don't have someone who knows,
Mhm.
they will just resort back. In some cases, it's not malicious, but in other cases, obviously, it's also malicious. But
Oh,
it
okay.
is, it becomes our responsibility to set up these possibilities for people's dignity to continue, because the Islamic funerary procedure has as its goal that level of dignity to the
Mm.
body,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
yet the trans body is in fact the body that reminds us that not everything is fixed. So
Mhm.
then we need to also transit in the way in which we address it. I had this
Mhm.
discussion with another trans man from Malaysia,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I have done the body washing, once only
Mhm.
in my life, because I'm not in an official institution where I get asked to do it, but I was in a situation once where they didn't have someone, and I volunteered with other women to do another cis
Mhm.
gender woman's body. And the respect that it gives to the body is so obvious. So, how do you maintain that respect when the body itself is itself a portrayal of transition? And that's why it's, even more important that we, come to understand that, you know, this journey this journey that we all have to take through this dunya to return to Allah is a journey where we are tested with regard to, you know, our best selves. Can we arrive at the beauty, or do we, wallow in, the ugly? Obviously, there's enough of the ugly going on that I don't need to
Mhm.
specify, but for me, the opportunity to be a part of removing the levels of abuse, as you said, sexual, physical, psychological, and spiritual, but then ultimately, even the body, in passing, is subject to, another level of abuse. So, it's
Mhm.
important for us to gain competence in being able to help our brothers and sisters making that final transition, and not to be the thing that, as converts in the United States, it's one of the things that, we used to really be concerned about, because of course we had to establish like Muslim cemeteries and places where you could wash the
Mhm.
body, and, not embalm it, which is the custom, in the United States. Um, and one of the things we realize is that you have to plan for it. You can't, it happens haphazardly, like the instance where I ended up watching a body because this woman, she was dead in her apartment for several days and no one knew. And then when they found out that she was Muslim, they contacted, the Muslim community, sort of in a hurry. So, we have to plan for it. We really have to be conscientious, and that's why I think, you know, all aspects of learning are important generically in Islam. Talabat al-ilm faridatun ala kulli muslim wa muslima. Seeking knowledge is incumbent upon every Muslim, male and female, and non-binary. So we need to train people so that they're competent to do it, so that it doesn't become so overwhelming, because we are all going to die. So we need all of us to expect that we can be treated with dignity, and we need to be proactive in making plans so that it can happen, and so that it can happen according to our wishes. That was the thing that being a convert, sort of emphasized. It's like we need to be able to signal to our families that no, don't take us to the church because we died. We want to be married, buried in a Muslim way, But it's not. They don't know, So we just have to, work actively to bring those kinds of training to the community at large, so that more people will be competent, and also so that people are more comfortable to understand, what are the wishes that I have for my body? I guess I'm sounding like an old lady, so I'm not going to harbor on that anymore. What are the wishes that I have for my body, and where can I make sure that those wishes will be respected when I cannot speak for myself because I am dead. You know. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm hoping the gallery will join us. It's okay because I can just chat with Amar and you guys can just the gallery. Just
I
do
think
this and make
um,
sure because the way that this thing works is not always yes. Okay, so you mentioned that you're interested in theology. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing in Birmingham and how you study theology, what your plans are?
yeah. Yeah. Well, in Birmingham so far, I have a lot of very challenging, but also let's say beautiful experience here. Well, I expected to study theology and religion and using the framework of gender and sexuality. So I'm really lucky because in the campus they have this module, genders, sexualities, and religions, where it's really insightful for me to really understand more the thing that I have not known before. And but I think most of experience that I have here so far is actually the engagement with local queer communities, because then I realize how here like the racism is also intersection very strongly, very deeply uh, with other things like queer identities. So I've met with these queer people of color. Then I realized that even being queer here does not like does not guarantee you to be accepted, because if you are black, if you are brown, then you still will be excluded from community. And even in the UK, I just knew that there was these LGB alliances. So LGB alliances, but they excluded trans, and they they see trans women as a threat in LGB alliances. I was shocked. I was shocked by that. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? Because how can you be like very how can you talk about gay and
It is
lesbian,
it
but
is a
you
mixed bag because when they came with the third gender, first in
uh-huh,
India and then in
uh-huh,
Pakistan, which is also a Muslim
mhm,
majority country, it's much easier for trans people to then say that they have sort of legal acceptance.
mhm,
So they don't want to be part of LBG because there's more taboo.
okay,
So it's
okay,
a mixed
okay.
bag, it
Yeah,
happens,
yeah,
it
yeah.
happens, and it also happens in terms of the Muslim women movement that they don't want
Mhm.
to address sexuality because they
Yeah.
feel like it's taken so long in the binary context to get a
Mhm,
leg, up. And then we have to deal with the fact that people's sexual identities
mhm,
are not fixed either. Then it
mhm,
means that they feel like they're going to lose that one leg up that they've gotten. So
mhm,
I mean, what we have to understand is my oppression is not greater than your oppression. Anybody who's oppressed, and that
yeah.
the way, yes, and that the way to move forward
Mhm,
is for all of us to reach to each other, and not like
mhm,
crabs in the
exactly.
bucket trying to pull them down, but rather if you're at the end of the bucket, reach back and pull someone up with
Mhm,
you.
mhm,
And if you do that for every day of your life, there's still going to be more
mhm,
oppression. So in other words,
mhm,
there's an endless supply of opportunities to do good
mhm, mhm,
and to be inclusive and to
mhm,
take that notion of intersectionality and constantly, like that Rubik's cube. I have never been able to get that Rubik's cube to look like the full color on any side, not even one, let alone all
mhm,
six, right?
mhm.
But I just keep fiddling with it, and what I learned from it is that there's so many ways to be diverse.
Exactly. That's true.
And you know, I think for me, when I had the opportunity to do the research funded by the Arcus Foundation, and I went over, you know, Islamic classical sources for the first 500 years, and I did it on purpose. I didn't want to do everything because there are strategic changes in terms of history and all of that. But I wanted to see what was the founding discourse, you know, and 500 years is not a short period of time. But one of the things that I came away with is how important it is to understand that diversity is not a bad thing, you know, and that it manifests in so many ways, that the way in which each of us can find something about ourselves that we want to have included in that rubric of diversity, there are things for which we might fit in with the majority and be so comfortable that we don't realize that we are othering different kinds of diversity because it's not something that we ourselves have yet been, you know, in, you know, a disadvantaged location with regard. But I think all of us have some challenge in some way. And I love that in UK and in the EU, even more so than in the US, the issue of race, ethnicity is uh, uh, interspersed not only with sexual identity, but with religious identity. You see, because the Muslim is the other
Yeah.
sometimes in these places. And, you know, some of my queer friends will say, you know, if it's between Islamophobia, you know, from
Yeah.
non-Muslims and homophobia from Muslims, you know, I mean, you know, which
Yes.
one of those,
That's true.
right?
Yes.
They're equally problematic in some way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyone from the gallery who
Mhm.
wants to join? Let me just make sure because it's great for me. I am going to do a little shameless plug because Queer Islamic Studies and Theology as a collaborative portal will be launched tomorrow on Valentine's Day. Wherever you are, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be made available. It is possible to join for free, but you must subscribe because obviously we have security concerns. And not only that, it is my hope that as 2022 rolls along, we will also have some activities. I've already told Amar that I'm expecting him to come back and do something with us. We're going to have activities that will be organized under that framework, keeping in mind that the goal is to make sure that sexuality becomes integrated in the study of Islam, and that sexuality is not just heteronormative sexualities, and that the study must take into consideration the representation of queer Muslims. That, you know, I always tell people, you know, I went to university in the 1970s. I actually started in the year 1970. And at that time, we were pushing for the establishment of women's studies as a legitimate discipline, and for African American studies or Black studies. And so I remember this experience, you know, from, you know, more than 50 years ago. And I see that if we keep at it, 50 years down the road, it will be integrated. And therefore, it will give better opportunities, not only for particular students who are engaged in study, but for all of us in the community to, you know, raise our level of awareness, and to be a part of the, yeah, I mean, the beauty that is Islam. I mean, that's the thing. The thing is that there is in my mind more beauty than there is, you know, something else. But sometimes the ugly voices are the loudest. Doesn't necessarily make them right. They're just loud.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
Mm,
I'm not going to push us
mhm.
in terms of the gallery. I just want to thank you all for joining. And I look forward to seeing you all in the KISS space. The website is going to be kissed1.com. And it will be available for you to subscribe and also to volunteer to help us to populate the page by reminding us of the issues that perhaps you encounter in your institutions or in your communities as issues that we need to highlight and earmark when we start thinking about how do we promote this at the level of the academy. Um, it's not it's not it's not meant to be provocative. It is simply something that at the moment I find that there have been scholars working, and there's amazing publications that have been there. In fact, I did organize a conference when I was doing the Arthur's Grant, and they're coming out with a book from that conference from Duke University. And there are people who've been working on ideas that means that it's already available in certain academies. But if there's not a degree granted or a course with credits, those kinds of things, it still gets marginalized. And so people have to sort of make their way, in terms of Black studies, people had to make their way in the side of other studies. It could be social studies, it could, sociology, anthropology, history. They had to make their way until it was acknowledged by the larger institution that it should be also legitimately integrated. And for many reasons, you can see that we have to do these kinds of things virtually. By that, I mean, we have to start to push. I had myself the opportunity to teach in a course that was organized by some friends in the region, South and Southeast Asia. And I just thought, well, this is the kind of thing that they should have in the academy. And this is being organized, by activists who understand that there's always an intersection between Iman and A'mal Salih, between the idea, the Iman, and the actions towards it, right? So, I consider that we are leading the way by the kinds of activities that we have been already having. And at the same time, we still want to push so that there is greater acceptance at every level. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in this gallery sign up for it tomorrow, inshallah. And also some of you who have asked to help us to generate a portal page just for you and the kind of work you're doing. Anything that has to do with sexuality, we want to have included, because we don't want to have queer sexuality become something that is an aberration. We just want an honest discussion about sexuality in Islam, which once upon a time we used to do so much better than we seem to be able to do today, Any questions from the gallery before we go? I'm going to give the floor to Amar to say his final goodbyes. Amar, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I expected to see a lot of Indonesian friends here asking something, but that's okay. It's a Sunday night here in Indonesia, right? That's fine. So yeah, I would like to just thank you, Dr. Amina. What you're doing is really amazing. I mean, sorry it's not being ageist, but like I'm younger, but I don't have energy to do that. But you are leading this way to create this really amazing portal that I find it very, very important as well. And I think because there's a lot of Indonesian friends here that can benefit from the portal, I believe. So I think my final remarks, what I want to say, yeah, I think the idea and the idea of gender and sexuality and my experience as a trans man leads me to understand the deeper concept of what faith means, what Islam means, because before I found out as a trans man, I always saw Islam as as a source for people to judging others, for people to oppress others, and to feel they are their own truth. Whereas in Islam itself, Islam is the, even the word Islam, salam means peace, but I didn't see peace before I found out as a trans man. And then when I navigate my gender identity and I see how beautiful it is, the gender and sexual diversity within human body, that actually makes me more, let's say, connected with my own faith, because in like God creates us not in the boxes. It is human that create boxes, not us. Sorry, not God, not Allah. So yeah, I think when we create like these more diverse, more more inclusive ways of practicing Islam, practicing even religion in general, that can make us at least, let's say, faithful in terms of how we become more, I don't know, like spiritually connected, and also more respectful to others. Because when we respect others, that is actually we respect our faith and our God. Yeah, thank you.
Beauty leads to beauty, I
Sorry.
think, if we share the beauty, then the beauty should be,
Mm,
more abundant,
mhm,
Would
mhm,
you close
yeah.
with a little dua for us? I hate to put you on the spot.
uh
It could
I
be
think
just
okay, I want to read Fatiha, because in my tradition, Fatiha always close everything and open everything. So thank you, Auntie, and also our friends here who already joined. I hope that we can create more place and spaces for us to celebrate our diversity in terms of gender and sexuality. Let's close by reading Fatiha to all of us, so that we can seek peace in ourselves, that we can embrace whoever we are, and we embrace our gender, and we embrace our sexuality, we embrace our spirituality. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. I mean, thank you,
thank you
Auntie, thank
all.
you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much, Amar.